BlackRock is in chaos. They've been forced to admit hundreds of millions of dollars in loans that are actually entirely worthless. They're complicated debt financial instruments designed to profit off the asset bubble through intentionally dishonest financial wizardries are now being downgraded by ratings agencies after they actually looked inside those debt bombs. And now, to top everything off, BlackRock is actually being attacked by pension funds and by New York City themselves, pulling billions of dollars away from them for their now exposed sin of pushing ESG, environmental, societal and governance, and DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, woke policies upon all of us, making us poor and them rich. And I've already made a couple of videos explaining their collapsing debt instruments and their worthless loans that they hid for years, and so today I'm going to explain the pension fund time bomb helping to bring down BlackRock. So what is the actual news? Well, it's right here. New York City Comptroller Lander is urging 3 of the city's pension funds to drop BlackRock because of inadequate climate plans, the latest move to penalize investment firms for failing to tackle global warming. The guidance to reject BlackRock, the city's largest money manager overseeing $42 billion of index funds for the pensions, follows a review of the firm's efforts to press companies to decarbonize. Lander said on Wednesday that he's asking plan trustees to terminate much smaller mandates with Fidelity Investments and Panagora Asset Management as well, basically competitors to BlackRock. BlackRock has scaled back climate engagement in a ways that put our investments at risk needlessly, Lander said in a phone interview. Climate risk is financial risk, apparently. You can see it all around you in increased numbers of flash floods and wildfires. In response, BlackRock's managing director wrote in a letter to Lander that he is alleging that the firm is abdicating its financial duty and putting New York City's pensions at risk. These statements are another instance of the politicization of public pension funds, which undermines the retirement security of hardworking New Yorkers. Lander's recommendations must still be approved by the trustees of the pension boards, and then, depending on their decision, New York-based BlackRock will be able to rebid for the index fund business. Lander's proposal is one of his last acts before his term as comptroller ends in a few weeks, as incoming Mayor Socialist Zoran Mamdani will be sworn in on January the 1st, and his appointees will have some influence over the city's retirement system. So New York City has a huge portfolio of pension funds for its state sector employees worth about $300 billion, and $42 billion of that is being taken away from BlackRock. Now, BlackRock are mostly actually in the business of low-cost tracker funds and index funds and ETFs and bond portfolios and the like, and they really only charge just under 0.5% per year as a management fee, and New York City, as one single client for BlackRock, is worth about $250 million every single year in revenue. Now, New York is obviously a fairly blue city, even more so, we've realized recently, with Zoran Mamdani coming in shortly, and they're basically looking to punish companies for the so-called climate crisis. Now, some might be saying that $42 billion isn't a huge amount to BlackRock, which actually is wrong. This is a massive client, and it will cost BlackRock probably a few percentage points of their share price alone each year, and that's not even considering the fact that New York doesn't just have $42 billion worth of pension funds, it's got $300 billion, more than any other city on earth, and so far only 3 of the 29 pension funds that are with BlackRock have been threatening to leave. This could very clearly escalate further, and this is also just representative of further problems for BlackRock. They're spending 10 times less time, effort, attention and money on the climate agenda or ESG or DEI, and the left of the country, or the Democrats, they're very angry with BlackRock, which makes up a huge amount of BlackRock's business. Right now, BlackRock manages about $13.5 trillion US, and their single largest sector of their clients is pension funds, making up about 30% of their business, or $4 trillion. They then have an extra $1 trillion managed by non-profit institutions like universities and charities, which are incredibly left-leaning almost always, and they have about another $500 billion with literal government institutions, most of whom skew very left-leaning, not right at all, and are very unhappy with BlackRock's betrayal of the globalist climate change agenda. So all in all, about half of BlackRock's $13 trillion assets under management are held with organizations which are innately political and have pushed incredibly hard to mandate the climate change agenda in recent years, and now they're angry that BlackRock is working against them. So in theory, BlackRock could find themselves losing as much as $6 trillion in assets under management simply because these organizations are unhappy with their lackluster recent commitment to globalism, which would just be catastrophic for BlackRock for obvious reasons. Now, some might think that, okay, this is all a little bit hyperbolic because BlackRock provides too much value to these institutions. That's what BlackRock said in their response to the New York City's pension funds threatening to leave, right? They said, and I quote, "The city is abdicating its financial duty and putting New York City's pensions at risk. These statements are another instance of the politicization of public pension funds, which undermines the retirement security of hardworking New Yorkers." But the truth is, BlackRock don't do anything special, literally nothing. They invest into bonds and broad-based index funds, and there are countless competitors who do exactly what BlackRock do, just as well, on the same sort of scale, and for the exact same price as well. In reality, there isn't actually a difference in expertise or economies of scale between an organization like, say, BlackRock or State Street or Fidelity or Vanguard, right? An index fund is an index fund. So New York City can actually take its pensions away from BlackRock while staying invested in the exact same underlying assets and not changing anything about the risk profile or the returns of their investments. And on this case in particular, actually, this comptroller Lander, he specifically stated that he is happy with the commitment that Vanguard have made towards climate change and fighting and ESG and DEI, and he's not happy with BlackRock. So there's a very good chance that actually BlackRock could lose out massively from this, and Vanguard picks up all of those assets which disappear from BlackRock's balance sheet. But unfortunately for BlackRock, it doesn't stop there. GOP politicians criticized Chief Executive Officer Larry Fink for years for championing environment and social strategies. But then when BlackRock pulled back more recently, Democrats, including Lander, scrutinized the world's largest money manager for not doing enough to make corporate America greener. Lander's office said that the Trump administration's change to disclosure rules led BlackRock to stop pressing companies on environmental goals when it has a stake exceeding 5%. Democratic state officials from New York to California sent letters to asset managers in August urging them to resist pressure from the Trump administration and GOP lawmakers and to fully assess the risks tied to global warming, supply chains, and corporate governance. They said Republicans are misrepresenting the true meaning of fiduciary duty by ignoring long-term climate threats. The coordinated Democratic push follows more than 3 years of Republican attacks against environmental, social, and governance investing. They have called ESG a threat to capitalism. GOP officials launched investigations, including anti-ESG state bills, many of which have failed and restricted some firms from doing business in their state. Basically, BlackRock had been the darling love child of the socialist left for about a decade because of how hard they pushed the woke ESG and DEI agenda. But after the right started to fight back and started winning, BlackRock had to pick a side. And they actually kind of refused to pick a side, choosing to just piss off both sides and appease neither. And as the right is in power on a federal basis, but the left is still in power in a lot of individual states, BlackRock is really starting to bleed, including being attacked by other blue states, with the most important one, besides New York, being California. BlackRock is genuinely at risk of losing trillions of dollars in assets and billions of dollars in revenue simply because the left have decided they're no longer a climate ally. Now, it is incredibly likely that BlackRock are genuinely going to suffer here, and honestly, good, they deserve it at this point, right? But the problem is BlackRock is seriously struggling even outside of this new war on woke, as their private credit and their private loans market is falling apart. Again, I made a couple of videos about this over the last couple of days, breaking down exactly what went on, but basically BlackRock has been exposed as hiding their failing loans that they're giving out and pretending its debtors are safe and secure, when in reality, loads of them are on the brink of bankruptcy, and as a result of that, BlackRock is now having to book massive losses overnight. They maintain the supposed book values of these loans as long as they can. Then the company which takes out those loans, they literally file for bankruptcy, and BlackRock have to book that entire loan as a loss overnight, causing a little bit of panic in the markets and massively dampening their investment prospects. They're also seeing their complicated financial instruments called collateralized loan obligations fall apart too. And what do you know? These CLOs are basically just renamed mortgage-backed securities, or CDOs, that took down the entire global economy back in 2008. Now you chuck on top of that the insanely dangerous AI bubble, and it's now almost a certainty that a bailout and a market collapse is coming. Either we're going to see an outright open bailout like we saw in 2008, or we're going to see something a little bit more akin to the COVID crash with infinite money printing then leading to massive inflation that you still end up paying with anyway. Now I genuinely see no outcome where any Western country isn't in dire trouble after this, and literally incapable of not stealing from just ordinary citizens like you or me to pay off this private credit and this financial disaster. And that's why I'm so cautious with how I choose to protect my assets. In fact, I've spent the last 5 years pretty much making money and then swiftly and silently protecting those assets and my future from the inevitable prying hand of the government when it comes trying to take it off me. And in the UK, we just had a budget literally come out yesterday from our government announcing sweeping tax rises that are going to hit people like myself hardest of all. Now, if you want to protect yourself from the government, from inflation, or even just market turmoil entirely legally by offshoring your assets or your business, then I actually might be able to help you. I'm putting together right now a step-by-step blueprint to follow to protect yourself from this kind of state chaos. And as it's the end of November, I thought that I'd run a special Black Friday pre-sale before it actually goes live next month, the blueprint, and give that blueprint away at a massive discount. So if you want to learn more, click the link down below in the description and you can see exactly what the blueprint includes, how it works for different countries and regions, completely legally, and if it's right for you there. But be careful because this is a special offer and it's only going to last for a few days before it ends. So make that decision quickly and click the link down below to learn a little bit more. Now back to BlackRock, and you might be thinking, what's the big deal here, right? BlackRock has given in to Trump and the red states, and they're basically at war with the Democrats, but at least they're on the side with the red states and the Republicans, right? Well, no, they are deeply, deeply under attack and under threat from the right side of politics as well, because even though they have now finally scaled back their ESG manipulation, their climate change cartel, they did run it for years, and they've only just backed out of it over the last year or so. And there are plenty of Republicans incredibly angry at these betrayals who are now attacking BlackRock as well. A US judge on Friday largely rejected a request by top asset managers, including BlackRock, to dismiss a lawsuit filed by Texas and 12 other Republican-led states that said the companies violated antitrust law through climate activism that reduced coal production and boosted energy prices. US District Judge Jeremy Carnudo in Tyler, Texas, agreed to dismiss just 3 of the 21 counts in the state's lawsuit, which also names institutional investors State Street and Vanguard. The lawsuit is among the highest profile cases targeting efforts to promote environmental, social, and governance goals. Texas Attorney General said the 3 companies created an investment cartel to illegally control national energy markets and squeeze more money out of hardworking Americans, and that today's victory represents a major step in holding them accountable. The 3 asset managers said they would continue to defend against the claims, with Vanguard calling the ruling disappointing and State Street calling the case a risk to investors and energy markets. By pursuing forced divestment, the Attorney Generals are undermining the Trump administration's goal of American energy independence, claimed BlackRock. The ruling by Carnudo, who was appointed by Trump, means the states can move forward with their claims that the asset managers violated US antitrust law by joining Climate Action 100+, an investor initiative to take action to combat global climate change, and they use their shareholder advocacy in furtherance of its goals. The companies have denied wrongdoing and called the case half-baked, but the states' theories have garnered support from Trump-appointed antitrust enforcers at the Department of Justice and Federal Trade Commission. The outcome of the lawsuit could have major implications of how the companies, which together manage some $27 trillion, approach their holdings and passive funds. Basically, BlackRock was forcing its customers to pull their money away from fossil fuel investments against their own customers' wishes. Now, this, first of all, is a massive industry in the US, employing literally millions of people, so those actions directly contributed to a reduction in output in the US, literally making Americans poorer. But it was also entirely in vain anyway, since those coal-powered generational power plants, right, they were still burning coal, and China was still building 50 new coal-powered power plants every single year, and the Arab world is still drilling for more oil and gas than ever before. This climate mandate was literally BlackRock forcing Americans to be poorer because they believed in a fundamentally flawed globalist worldview that just doesn't work. And now the Republican states which suffered under BlackRock's mandate to divest from fossil fuels, they're fighting back. They're suing BlackRock and the other fund managers that colluded with BlackRock, that created this cartel, that refused to allow their own customers to invest their own money as they saw fit, and which saw massive support and assistance from the Democratic government in creating this cartel over the last 5 years, which is why this was actually possible in the first place. The cost to BlackRock of this, it's not small. It could literally be into the trillions of dollars, as the right does not want to allow these companies off the hook to escape their punishments, to make sure that they don't try this kind of cartel price-fixing illegal action again. And I do think it's very easy to just sort of forget how influential BlackRock was in particular as the main pusher of the climate change agenda. As the single largest asset manager in the world, they held people's livelihoods in their hands. And most retail investors in particular simply don't know what BlackRock do. Right? They have their pension in a BlackRock fund. It's called iShares, so they might not even know that it's a BlackRock fund. And beyond its headline and tagline, they don't know anything about that ETF. So they don't even know that they were divested from fossil fuels, which literally make the world go round. And BlackRock are now getting hit on both sides, and there simply isn't an easy way out for them. If they keep abandoning their ESG and their DEI practices, they will continue to irritate the left, and they will end up losing billions, maybe even trillions in investor money from left-leaning charities and universities and cities. And if they give in to the left and go back full steam into the woke ESG, climate change, DEI agenda again, they will just open themselves up to more litigation and more attacks from the federal government and the red states. Now, back in 2018, Larry Fink really kicked this ESG nightmare off when he released this now infamous letter outlining his commitment to ESG and diversity. And here's a particular quote for you. Mr. Fink stated that board diversity would remain a focus for BlackRock. We will also continue to emphasize the importance of a diverse board. Boards with a diverse mix of genders, ethnicities, and career experiences and ways of thinking have, as a result, a more diverse and aware mindset. BlackRock then released this disastrous document and report explaining how they will be putting ESG first and investor returns will be sent to the back of the pack, all in the name of climate change, purely to appease the left-leaning political establishment and globalists. Then he released an annual report in 2018 where he stated that sustainability is the new standard. Even their annual report was not safe from this left-wing climate change scam. And all that sustainability is the new standard really means is just money being funneled into the ESG cartel that was no longer optional. It was going to happen on autopilot and there wasn't a way to opt out. Finally though, after Trump assumed office for the second time earlier on in the year, BlackRock gave up on its ESG and its DEI push. BlackRock scrapped its aspirational workforce representation objectives, reversing course on earlier goals after Trump moved to end diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. The world's largest asset manager will abandon specific targets to increase the representation of employees in its workforce and will no longer require hiring managers to interview a diverse slate of job candidates. In its 2023 annual report, the company discussed its DEI practices and said a diverse workforce with an inclusive and connected culture is a commercial imperative and indispensable to its success. It disclosed percentages of US employees who were Black or Latino. In its 2024 annual report, they dropped the DEI term and didn't disclose those similar percentages, and it has now walked away from board diversity targets in its shareholder voting guidelines. BlackRock's move follows diversity U-turns by the biggest financial firms like Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. Major companies across the US are dialing back DEI programs, especially those with contracts with the federal government. For years, US Republican lawmakers and conservative advocacy groups have targeted BlackRock for being woke because of its promotion of environmental, social, and governance or ESG investing. States pulled billions of dollars from the firm in response to the firm's ESG investing, and Fink subsequently opted to stop using the term ESG altogether. It may sound a little bit ambitious of me to sit here right now and call this as an early victory, but I really do think that we've beaten the left on this, right? They only really exist in these weird microcosms of liberal elites, the kids who grew up so rich that they'll remain rich even with socialism destroying the country. Every person I know who's self-made or at the least, trying to do something with their life, they're entirely fed up with the state of ESG and DEI, and they're all happy to see evil woke globalist companies like BlackRock finally suffering for their sins. Now make sure to take a look at the link down below in the description to learn more about my offshore freedom blueprint. In it, I'll show you how I've been able to protect myself completely legally from the insanely overbearing and socialist UK government, and how you can do the same no matter where you live in the world. The pre-sale is going to end this week when prices will go up to full price, so take a look as soon as possible before it's too late. And if you want to tell me how right or wrong I am, or to make a video about something in particular, you can tell me in the comments down below. I always try and read all of the comments each day. And if you don't want to miss out on my future videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. But if you really want to drive change and help me and help this channel and everyone else, send this video to someone else. Click the share button down below and send this video to a friend, a co-worker, or a family member, and help them learn about BlackRock's sins as well. BlackRock are in serious trouble. A couple of weeks ago, they saw a 100% loss on a loan that they had considered perfectly safe and absolutely certain to be paid back in full just 20 days prior. And this has opened the kimono, exposing BlackRock as an extremely delicate house of cards. But now the situation has gotten worse.